Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a kind of change of pace from the videos I've been posting recently. We are going to discuss some note-taking tips and also how I take notes as a chemical engineering student. Before we get in, don't forget to like this video if you end up enjoying it and finding it useful, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment down below letting me know what you found helpful or if you have any tips that I didn't cover in this video. With that, let's jump in. So to kind of give you my street cred for this video, I am going to be a senior in chemical engineering this upcoming school year, and I've done pretty well in school. I get mostly A's, except for organic chemistry. We don't talk about her. But otherwise, in a lot of my engineering classes, I have done pretty well, and I like to think I have a solid system and organization method that has helped me be successful as an engineering student. So first of all, I use my HP Spectre both as a laptop and as a tablet to take notes on. This is really great as an engineering student because, like I mentioned, I can take notes on it using the stylus that came with the laptop, and it also has enough processing capabilities to where I can run all of the engineering software I need to, such as MATLAB and KimCAD. The particular version of my laptop I got also has a graphics card, so like if you're a mechanical, civil, electrical engineer and have some more advanced software you need to use later on in your curriculum, this laptop also has those capabilities. I don't always need those as a chemical engineering student, but they're there nevertheless. So this laptop was very expensive. I did get it on sale at Best Buy, and I will get into this toward the end of the video when I show you how I do my notes, but I use the OneNote app, which is free if you have Windows. My university provides all students enrolled with a free download of Windows. I have Windows 10. I would highly recommend checking with your university to see what kind of plans they offer their students. So as far as my note-taking method, my first tip would be to read ahead as much as possible. It really varies depending on the course and the professor. That leads me into the 3 types of notes I kind of categorize note-taking in, again depending on the kind of class it is, the kind of professor you have, and even what kind of notes you like to take. So the first type is adding on to your professor's notes. I have several professors, especially in my engineering classes, who will post their PowerPoint slides ahead of time. I even have some who do like fill in the blank, or they leave room for you to put your own notes in. And while you could print them out, having a tablet or a 2-in-1 laptop is great because you can fill them in electronically. And if you don't have that, you can of course, like I mentioned, print them out. And this is super easy because once you get to class, you can have already reviewed an overview of what the lecture is going to be about, and instead of learning everything or seeing it for the very first time, you can highlight important information and write down anything that is repeated multiple times throughout the lecture, because it's more likely that that's going to show up on a test or in your homework in the future. And again, this also helps you be more efficient because you don't have to worry about writing down every single little detail, because you have that in the PowerPoint notes provided by your professor already, so you can just catch the important stuff. This next one I actually haven't used too much during my engineering classes, but I found it really helpful during a lot of gen eds and science classes, but I think you can still apply it to engineering classes if this is the way you learn. This can be why reading ahead is really important. So if your professor provides some assigned reading or recommended reading for a lecture, you can go ahead and read it and take very high-level basic notes on the material. That way you have an outline of what they might go through during the lecture. This also provides you with a really good opportunity to think of questions while you're reading, and you can come to class prepared to ask them, or maybe your professor will even answer those questions during the lecture. So the third and final type of note-taking are fresh lecture notes. This means this is the first time you're coming across the material. Maybe your professor isn't as organized and doesn't like to provide information ahead of time. It happens, but regardless, this is the first time you're seeing this material. It can be kind of overwhelming, I think, to keep track of all of that. So this is where, for me, color coding and organization really plays a big part. I like to use like a specific color or a specific highlight color to keep track of concepts I'm not understanding, so that maybe after class or during class I can follow up with my professor, go to the textbook, ask my friends for more clarification. And I also like to use a color, usually a really bright one like yellow highlighter or something, to keep track of things that are emphasized, or a lot of my professors will say this will be on the test. So it's getting a yellow highlight, it's getting lots of stars to make sure when I'm going back and studying and making my cheat sheets and note cards that I put that on there. So those 3 types of note-taking structures kind of cover the basics. So now let's switch over to my laptop view and a voiceover to talk about how I personally take notes on my HP Spectre. Hey guys, and welcome to this portion of the video where I'm going to show you kind of how I take notes on my HP Spectre. I've got my stylus here that has been acting up today. Of course, when I decide to film a video, it's not going to want to behave, but that's fine, we'll get through it. Worst case scenario, I'll just show you with notes I already have written kind of how I take them. So I have my computer here, and I apologize for any background noise. I try to film during the quietest part of the day, but as I'm sure you all can relate, I have lots of family members who are also trying to live their lives, so bear with me. But basically, I just wanted to show you kind of how the stylus works. Up here in the tool panel, you can go to Draw, and I use OneNote for Windows 10 to take my notes just because it's free when you have Windows, and I have Windows through my university, so why not take advantage of that? I know there's some other apps that people recommend. If you're interested in a different app, I'd recommend checking out somebody else's video. I'll link some of those down below, like people who have iPad Pros or different laptops that like to use those. So that's my one complaint, is my stylus is kind of old at this point, and I should probably put a new tip on it. It comes with like 2 or 3 extras, and it probably needs new batteries as well, but we work with what we got, right? When it is working, however, I basically start all of my notes, titling them the date of the lecture or the lecture number. For example, during this class, my professor labeled the lectures by number. So I said lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3. Sometimes, like on this class, I use the date, although I got tired of that, and I think I eventually stopped putting the year just because it became just so long. To give you an example of what it looks like to add to another professor's notes, in my biochemical engineering class, my professor provided these PowerPoint slides, so I would just fill in the blank during class, and sometimes he did overhead notes, so I would just add those in, and I used the grid option, which when you go to view and rule lines, you can do regular rule lines like on notebook paper or grid lines, and I chose the second box for that because I feel like I like the scale that creates. You can see I was a little distracted that day and was doing some doodling. Essentially, I don't have a lot of time during these classes, as I mentioned previously. These are kind of like fresh lecture notes. These are just the plain PowerPoint ones where you can add on. But these were basically fresh lecture notes because I didn't know ahead of time what we were going to be doing, and I had to be kind of quick. So I like to use this pink color just to kind of highlight the title of the section, and I like to take advantage of bullet points and numbering, just kind of depending on how my professor has it laid out in his notes as well, his or her notes. Here's an example of where I used color coding with a graph. That is super important. I found this really helpful to be able to go back and forth between the graph. And if you're using regular printer paper or regular notebook paper, it's difficult to, you're kind of stuck with what you draw at first, especially if you write in pen. And if you write in pencil, you have to spend a lot of time erasing stuff. What's nice about working electronically is you can move stuff around, make it bigger or smaller or stretch it out, and you can move it around if you'd rather have it over here. And this really allows you to, in class, customize the notes if you need to go back and add something on that the professor said that you didn't realize was going to need to go right there. And you can also type if you prefer that, or if you need to look something up, the keyboard will pop up as well. And like I showed earlier, you can go on your professor's SharePoint page or online and print PDFs and print PowerPoints to OneNote, and they will upload as printouts, and then they're in here for you to go ahead and write on. Again, I apparently was very distracted during that week trying to doodle, but it just makes life 10 times easier. So here's an example of fresh lecture notes. This particular professor did provide PowerPoints sometimes, but I found it easier to write out the information because there was like a lot of memorization necessary. It was for a materials class that I took. So again, I started with kind of a header, and I like to use these branches sometimes if there's things that need to go in certain categories. And again, I'm using this pink just to differentiate between things that are kind of in the same subcategory. So another way I like to take notes, this is for my Organic Chemistry 2 class. And again, this is another class where the professors will go so quick during lecture, and you just have to do your best to keep up, which is where having the electronic notes really helps. And I liked to break it up by chapter. We usually went over one chapter a day, and then sometimes like you'll see a different date, which means we went over that chapter over multiple lectures, and so I was just adding the next date we talked about this topic. And so here is an example of where I use this bright yellow to remind myself of something to do on a test. Draw the resonance structures is what that little shorthand means. And especially for organic chemistry, this was nice. You don't have to fool around with 400 different types of pen colors. If I wanted to use a different color to show the arrows during reaction mechanisms, I could just quickly switch to the color I wanted and didn't have to worry about, uncapping pens and making a mess. From when I took fluids, again, over a year ago now, this is where a professor provided a PowerPoint, but I added on my own notes. For example, the professor said to understand where this comes from and what assumptions were made. So I know when I'm studying, I need to go back and look, why did she make these assumptions? Where did the continuity equation come from? So those kind of notes really help when you're going back and studying and giving context to these PowerPoint notes. It's really important not to just be passive and print out the notes and then sit there. This really helps me stay active, and I don't know about you, but all of like the pretty colors that are available and all the different ways you can make it look fun really help me stay engaged even when I'm not feeling like it. So the professor for this one provided some in-class examples, and I was able to just fill in as I went without having to rewrite the problem statement or some of the given information, which again is such a huge time saver. So I hope this video was helpful. Of course, leave any questions you have about chemical engineering down below. I'm thinking about doing a second Q&A sometime soon. I will leave that first one in the description bar. Thank you guys so much for watching. With that, I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!